Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Nice to have you back on the call with SCTE. Hopefully all the SCTE education, you're able to get access to it and you're working through that. Again, we're very excited with the program and excited that you're doing the program. This will definitely make you more efficient and give you all the latest and greatest on the technologies. I also have Bob Grant, who will be the instructor for the broadband premise installer. He's on the call. So if, as we're going through this, it is open for you to ask any questions that you would like. If you have a question for Bob, instructor, please just ask your question, okay? The idea of this session is just to provide an understanding of the program. You've been doing some of the pre-work, answer any questions, make sure we're all on the same page. When Bob comes in 2 weeks, he can immediately come into the classroom and get started, and he's not struggling with people logging in or not understanding where everybody should be. So again, any question that you may have during the session, please ask it. So I have a couple slides I put together, and then I'm going to show you the platform, just so you know I cover everything. So you can see my screen, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the agenda for today was really to welcome you to SCTE. We kind of did that last time if you were in my wireless class, and everybody had a great time in the wireless class. Realize there's a lot of Wi-Fi knowledge needed and things that are changing. In fact, they just made an announcement of Wi-Fi 7, and as you know, in the field today, we're working with Wi-Fi 5, and 6 is coming at the end of this year and early next year. So lots of movement there, and as well as a lot of movement in the installation area. So installation, this is the whole entire triple play, all the foundation required to support customers on a HFC coaxial fiber network. We'll talk about the components of the class, the agenda for the boot camp, any content questions that you have as you're going through. The Virtual Learn platform is where you're actually going through and accessing content. You are members, so you have access to benefits. I'll point out a few of those for you. The certification. So the big thing here to understand is that you're going through a course. The course has module quizzes, it has a pretest. At the end of the course, there is a course final exam, and that earns you a certificate. Okay, that is not the certification. The idea there is after you finish the course and study, we've actually created a BPI practice certification exam to kind of gauge your knowledge. That will be, that's already been loaded up into the boot camp. I'll show you where that is. And then you sit for the certification exam and earn the certification, which is good for 3 years. So we'll review that real quick with you as well.
Steve, I ask you a question. What is the passing grade for the certification?
All SCTE certifications are 76 or greater. Okay. There's 50 questions, and it's open book and open notes. So while Bob is there, and you have your notebooks, take notes, because you can use those notes while you're taking your exam. Okay. So that's a good question. Yeah, after the 3-year period, you can actually renew without taking the exam again. And that could be just things that you're doing with one communication, whether that's something with your supervisor or a vendor coming in and doing some training or some training that you're doing in-house. So we could talk about that later on. And then we'll look at the one communication progression if you want. SCTE, if you don't know about us, we've been around for 50 years, since 1969. Really, we're geared for technical workforce proficiency. As members, you have access to the expo. We have an expo coming up in 2 weeks, which is the largest telecommunications show in the Americas. And you will have access to the papers at the end of the show as part of your membership. So you can actually access last year's papers on installation practices and stuff like that, or new technologies. So we have a lot of standards. One of the standards I mentioned last time was standard 255. That is the standard for Wi-Fi. And that's best practices for deploying Wi-Fi at a cable operator or telecommunication operator. So those are free. You can access that off the website. So there's over 300 of those standards. This is just our results. We have a third party evaluate us. We're doing quite well. So if you're interested, well, you know, how good is this SCTE program? We're pretty decent. We're all over the world. We're actually translating a lot of content for Mexico right now. So one of the largest cable operators in Mexico just signed on board to do SCTE, the SCTE program. So it's growing every day. More and more people are coming on board with SCTE. We're working to translate in Mandarin as well as French. We're working with a couple operators there on that as well. So we are getting larger and larger. The program that you're doing is the Broadband Premise Installation and Service. That's the name of the course. The certification is called Broadband Premise Installer. Okay, those are the program that you're doing. The modules are listed here. If you haven't seen a course description, hit me up afterwards. I have my email at the end. I will send it over to you. You should already have that, but if not, that's okay. We'll get it to you. What I suggest you do before Bob arrives are these pre-work areas. There's a pre-assessment. You do not have to study for it. Just go through and answer the questions. What we're trying to do is gauge your knowledge before the training. What we do know about training is that the knowledge level coming into a course, the knowledge level coming out of the course will grow exponentially because you are learning a lot of new things or getting a deeper understanding on things that you already do every day. And so the pre-assessment is important for us to communicate the value to one communication and also show you how you're improving in the program. And as you take the final exam and the certification, you'll see a gradual rise in your knowledge in broadband premise installation and service. And that's what that's for. So you don't have to study. You don't have to take it twice. Just take it one time. We're not going to score that against you. We just want to have that to see where you are. And that's also helpful for Bob to understand too. So Bob, as the instructor, he knows areas that he can concentrate on, right? So if Bob comes in, he doesn't have that information, he'll just assume everybody's on the same page. And then maybe some of the class is like, wow, that was an awesome class. And then another part of the class might say, wow, that wasn't so good. I'm still very confused on RF. So if you can do that for us, that's going to be very valuable and make the class that much better. So that way he can focus on areas for you. The micro lesson is just a short overview video. And I'll show you what that is. It's milliwatt. And she kind of goes through and gives you an overview of the course. Just go through it. It'll just kind of tell you what you're up for. It's very light. It's a little hokey, but it's kind of gives you a great idea of what the course is. And if anyone else at one wants to see that, it's actually geared for the general audience. So if you wanted to show it to, Josine, if you wanted to go and look at that, or David, if you want to look at it, you could look at that. We do ask to check out Module 1, Introduction to Cable Networks. That's going to give you a whole overview and introduction to cable networks, components of the network and such, and maybe do a little bit of the safety. That way, Bob doesn't have to spend a whole entire half day on safety when he gets there. So those are the four, and those were what we recommended since the beginning. The other modules, Bob will come in. He'll start with Module 1, and he'll go through that, even though you did it as pre-work. And we're hoping that you'll have questions for Bob, and then he can accelerate through that module, and that will give him time for some of the other deeper modules, right? So he'll still cover it. He'll still answer any questions that you have. And then same thing with safe work practices. And then after talking with Bob, you might say, you know what, I want to reattempt the quiz on those modules, and you can absolutely do so. So if you want to go back and say, you know what, I talked to Bob, I now understand some things I didn't understand, I want to go back and do the quiz for a better grade. No problem. And you can do the quizzes multiple times at the end of the chapters. We have them set for 3 times. If you wanted to, reinforce your knowledge. For instance, maybe aerial installation, oh, I thought I knew it and I really didn't. Let me go back and read, and I'm going to come back and take it again tomorrow. So you're welcome to go through and do those quizzes. The same thing, if you already know something, you say, well, you know, Steve, I already know aerial installation. I know it very well. Then just go right to the quiz and you're done with that module, right? And then that way you can just focus on the key points Bob has during the training. So you're welcome to go right to the quiz on any of the modules. We don't have them locked down. And then the rest of the modules, there's 18 in total. And so, for instance, there's obviously wiring and equipment in the home, all the stuff that you're dealing with. And all the equipment we'll talk about. Obviously, networking comes into play, and you start working with customers' devices and the different types of equipment, video, data, and voice equipment you'll run into. Probably the key area that Bob has a lot of expertise in, and he has expertise in everything, but I'm going to say 16 through 18 that's where you want to really pick Bob's brain. He's going to have the troubleshooting and repair process, and that's probably the most impactful for one communication, is getting the job done right the first time and resolving it the first time so we don't have to go back to the customer several times. So he's going to be able to provide a lot of insight there. And also on the premise signal configuration, you know, how do I lay out a network, understand the network? I would say some of the best technicians can actually walk a network and actually understand the dB loss just by looking at things, right? Obviously, we want you to do measurements and to be precise, but to have an overall feel walking into a customer's home and saying, you know what, I think I understand what the problem is. Let me talk to the customer and let's see what the customer is experiencing. Let me put the two pieces together and let's see if that's the problem. I'll pause there for any questions. Okay. I'll show you the course. So this, when you log into SCTE, I'm assuming you've already done so, but when you go into SCTE, I'll pop into there. You're going to make sure that it says welcome in your name on the right-hand corner. And if it doesn't, that means you have to hit sign in, and I'm signed in because it says sign out. So I'm going to click on my name, and that's where you launch your class. Okay, and if your name is not there, log in, and then when you log in, you'll have this nice dashboard, and you might not have a picture there because you didn't upload it, right? You're in charge of your profile. You can edit things in here and put in your information. It'll have like your member ID and such like that. The key tab here is My Learning. My Learning is what you're registered in. You can see that I have a whole bunch of different courses listed here, some past stuff that I did, some active training. So my active training is where I want to go. I don't know if I have the one in here, but I have a lot of active training. I might not have your specific here, but you'll see your specific training. We'll just I'll pick one, fiber restoration. I just hit launch, and that's all you have to do, and that will launch you into the program. And I pulled it all the way up, so let me show you what that will look like. Let's see. Give me a second too. So you've probably already been here, and it's loading up for me. I should have preloaded it for us. Yeah, I'm surprised it's taken long, so I have a gigabit internet here, but always does that when I share my screen. All right, but this is the learning plan that you have, okay? Now, the key thing to understand, you say, well, you know, Steve, I haven't been going through broadband premise installation and service. Well, in the program, you'll see that under CommTech 1, it's actually 3 different courses. It's Broadband Premise Installation Fundamentals, Troubleshooting 1, and Troubleshooting 2. It's actually 3 different courses in your progression. And then if you look under System Tech, under System Tech, the pre-experience review courses, it's listed as 1, 2, 3 courses. As a boot camp, it's 1 course. So if you're wondering, well, I might have did some of those modules, when you actually click in there, you'll see similarities to what I just displayed on the screen. And you'll see, oh, okay, there's introduction to the network, there's introduction to cable. Okay, now they look familiar. So that's the enterprise license. And that's all the training you have access to. So you probably went through some of the modules. And when you come to the boot camp, you were registered into a second course, which is the boot camp course. And the boot camp course, I had it here, boom, right here. So this is the boot camp course. Okay, so there might be some of the modules as you look at it and say, well, I already did that module. Well, the nice thing is, if you already did it, that's fine. You're ahead of the game. You can, if you want, go in and do the quiz and be done with it. All right, but if you already did it in the enterprise license, that's great. And then you'll have your questions ready for Bob. You may have not done the pre-assessment. So there's the pre-assessment. So as soon as you go into your boot camp, the first thing is the pre-assessment. And you'll see there's a link, and you just click the link and answer the questions. And then there's the modules. These are all the modules Bob is going to cover. And you'll say, well, you know, why do I have access to all these? Well, what you have access to is the ebooks, and I did have them here. Thought I did. Let me launch it. Oh, yeah, I did launch it again already. Give me a second here. You have access to the books. So the books are no longer printed. One of the reasons is it's hard to keep them up to date. And what we found is people are buying our books and using copies of the books that were 2 and 3 years old. This book is actually updated constantly, meaning if my team sees something that's not there or we get some feedback, they can be updated at any given time. So these are the books to the class. So if you want to follow along with Bob, these are the books. And it covers the learning objectives. And you click through the books just by going through the bottom, or you can click through the books on the left-hand side. So these are very similar format. Anyone on the call that was not part of the wireless class? But I take that as everybody was part of the wireless class? So yes? Okay. So you're familiar with the books. There's interactive pieces in here. The big thing here, and I won't go through all the features, but the big thing is you have a glossary. You have the ability to search all the books. So if I go click in the glossary, I can go to any of the terminology. I can search this book. I can go in and highlight the book and highlight just like a regular book. Oh, Bob said that's really important. And I can highlight it, and I can also go back and add a note to it. Bob said, da, 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 da. Hit save. And your notes will stay in the book. That's the advantage. So it's a real book, and that's why we chose this platform. Yeah, of course it has interactivity, and you'll find things like that to engage you and make it much better than a printed book. But the fact that you can still highlight, which people like to do, I love to do that, and the fact that you can put your own notes in there. You can actually go into the library of all your books, and that means if you have been enrolled in other courses, all your books will come up, and I have like 600 books or something like that. And the books have different colors, and the green books are the beginner, and the blue books are intermediate, and then the red books are engineering. And you could search and say, you know what, I want to know what a DBM is, and I'm obviously going to hit a whole bunch of books with this. I got 70 results. But the nice thing about this, you could search the book and say, wow, I wonder if there's any Wi-Fi 6 in any of these books. And yes, it is mentioned in 694 Wi-Fi is, and then you can actually search the book. So this will kind of give you a way to, if you're following along with Bob, he's talking about something, notice that when I search for Wi-Fi 6, I got like 700 results. I put quotes around it, I got 3. There's actually 3 books that talk about the new standard. But if Bob's mentioning something and you're unable to find it, you can search for it. And that's the nice advantage here that's available to you. The micro lesson at the beginning, this is milliwatt.
Common job duties.
So a lot of students are like, you know what, I don't really like her voice, whatever, that's fine. You can actually put on the closed caption, muter, and then kind of go through it yourself. You know, it's up to you. Maybe
as a technician, you are the technical expert.
So it basically goes through the role. What is broadband premise installation? And that's what this video is about. And that's part of the pre-work. I think the other, yeah. So as you're going through each of the modules, there's different pieces in each one of the modules. I'll just click on video, for instance. So Bob said, yeah, we're going to do video. You won't have multiple links like I have, but there's a module test or a confirmation of learning on each one. So this is what each module looks like. And then you hit back and you come out of the modules. There are, down the bottom, the course evaluation. You want to definitely, when you're done with the course, fill that out. There's the practice exam I talked about. So when you're ready for your certification, you don't have to do this when Bob is there. Bob has limited time, so if you want to do the practice certification, you can do that when he leaves. But I did allocate time for the final test. And then once you complete the final test and the course evaluation, you can get your certificate, just like before. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you have any problems, there's an email here for help. And then as you're kind of clicking through, I'll just go with the first module. There's actually a folder which will have reference documents and glossary documents. There's reference material. Okay. So all in all, that's the course. That's the access, just like before. What we're covering. So anything that that you can provide Bob in the class, I don't know if that's a possibility, but it's just kind of looking over this. If there's specific safety things that you do within one communication, let Bob know that. He's going to cover general safety, but there, again, might be specific things. We do follow a lot of OSHA. I know Bermuda follows a lot of OSHA best practices, so he'll bring that to the table. But again, if there's some equipment that you want to show them in the classroom, the new hires, just bring that in and Bob can talk to it. Maybe it's the ANSI glasses or hats or whatever that is that you have. Foreign voltage detectors that you use, you want to bring those into the classroom and Bob can talk to them, because we do talk about that. Same thing with signaling. A really good help piece in Module 5 would be having a signal level meter and actually showing RF channels in the classroom. So if you have an RF feed that is tied to the one communication network, then Bob can actually pull up the EIA channels, the 6 megahertz channels, and he can talk to that. So that's, if you have that available, that'd be great. If not, that's okay. But if you have RF and a signal level meter, that would be great. Installation prep tools, any tools that you want to bring. If you want to bring a toolkit in, a tool pouch that a technician would have, as we're talking through the tools in the course, we can pass them around during the classroom, right? So that's a recommendation. So if you wanted to, if you had questions about tools, like, well, I have this tool in my pouch, I have no idea what it does. Maybe you have a toner and probe and you never knew what it did, bring it to class, because that's talked about in our class, right? Bonding and grounding will be part of the class. So I don't think there's any things there that we need. Premise wiring, if there's any specific wiring that you do. Most of the time we use Series 6 for coax and Cat 5e or Cat 6 for premise wiring. But if there's other specific wiring that you have or connectorizations, any of those demo things you can have in the classroom, Bob can talk to them. For test equipment, if you have a volt-ohm meter, that would be great to talk a little bit about Ohm's law. Volt-ohm meters are excellent for opens and shorts and understanding ohms and voltages and current and stuff like that. So if that's available, you want to bring them into the classroom, that's great. As far as video is concerned, we will talk all the way through HD and some of the stuff that's happened around 4K, HDR, stuff like that. I was just out in place last week. They have 8K HDR already. It's crazy. It's a little too nuts, but that kind of gives you an idea. The 18, module 18, you're going to actually do some calculations. So you want to be able to calculate drop loss. So that day, if you want to bring yourself a calculator or use a calculator on your phone, it's it's fundamental math, but again, you might be new to this, and part of the class is understanding drop loss and what are the losses, and you might have a specific power level at the tap, and you'll have to figure out what will I have at the back of a splitter when I'm hooking up a cable modem, right? And vice versa, whether it's forward, I might also have to understand the reverse, right? So that's part of that. Also included in the course are real-life simulated experiences, meaning that you actually go into a 3D environment and actually do an activity, right? So that's part of the course. There is a mobile app if you want to put it on your phone. It's the SCTE Cortex mobile app. I showed a lot of you guys last time, and there is some fun games in the class that will kind of practice games that you can do if you're practicing for the final or the certification. Talked about the pre-work. The way the agenda will work, Bob, I put this together and shared this with Bob, and we're not stuck in stone here, meaning that Bob will show up a little bit early. He'll be there around 8 o'clock in the morning. We want to get things kicked off and get things started at 9, so that means that earlier we can get started at 9 and right into introduction to cable networks, the better. And then we'll kind of have our morning break, afternoon breaks, and lunches as shown. If you want, the little boxes there in gray and red, if you want to bring some of that equipment to the classroom, and maybe there's some equipment that you want to reinforce that maybe is not being worn properly or used properly, bring that to the classroom and we can talk about it. And do you use Viavi meters for RF? Is it the Viavi meters?
So, yeah, we have meters.
Is that a yes? Nope. Or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So it's up to you if you want to bring in, have an RF feed and RF meter there, and that way you can do some demonstration of the signals. Really, to understand RF, one of the things that we see is that people don't understand how F operates, the channels. So you'll think that the channels actually go in sequence by frequency. That's not the case. So you'll actually have different channel numbers. They'll say, oh, these must be low channels and these must be high channels, as for frequency, right? Not necessarily the case. And also understand frequencies that are in analog versus frequencies that are in digital. And then there's frequencies that are channel bonded. And then there's multiplexing and modulation that's different. So all that's going to be a big module for day one. So if you want to get it, if you're already done the pre-work and you want to get in and start looking at that module, that's a great one as far as the foundation for RF. We also see at the SCTE, this is the largest area of skills gap. People don't understand RF, right? How does radio frequency actually work, right? So this is actually the foundation for everything we do. So that's going to be a big focus point for Bob. And he'll wrap up the day. And if you want to hang out and do some quizzes, some of the chapter quizzes, you're welcome, or you can do them anywhere. Day two, he's going to continue with signal and transmission. I made sure that we had a little bit more time. If he gets done early, there's no questions, and everybody seems to have a good understanding of it, he'll move on. Installation prep, tools review. If there's any tools that you want to bring in, this is the time. He'll cover the installation methods for aerial and underground. Keep in mind, Bob does not have Bermuda specifics on installation. So if there are certain practices that are specific, which he's covering more of a general, I think we should be okay. But if there's something that you want to bring up in the class, we're flexible. So if you wanted to share something, say, well, in Bermuda, we do this, and bringing that to the class, that's fine. Or if you have some information you want to send to me before that, I'll make sure that we have that information prepped and part of the training. Bonding and grounding, he'll wrap up the day. Bonding, we don't really ground so much, and I know grounding is much different on an island because of the makeup of the soil. But bonding is one of the things that we typically do. Like I live in New Jersey. We don't run ground rods. We don't do grounding. Our technicians don't do that. However, we do bond. We do bond the ground rods, and we do bonding of the ground wire. However, we don't do the actual grounding part of it. So we'll talk about that and what's the difference there. We'll talk about NEC. We'll talk about those parts because the National Electrical Code is what we follow. And that's very similar to Bermuda. 3 and 4, just got what it looks like on 3 and 4. Big thing will be test equipment. So any meters that you want to bring, a voltometer is always good to show, like I said, measuring voltage or measuring DC, AC, understanding the difference between DC and AC. AC has impedance, which is made up of reactance, and inductance, which is different than DC, which is resistance. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about foreign voltage detectors, voltometers, TDRs. So any of that equipment you want to bring in. Bob is not a manufacturer. He does not demo all manufacturer equipment, so keep that in mind. So Bob, I'm not putting you on the spot like, hey, I would have to know every TDR and every meter out there. Bob, you know, the benefit of having that is if we want to actually look at a 6 megahertz channel, or we want to actually see, you know, here's what voltage looks like. You know, there's outlets in the room, and you can go up to them and see how that works. And if that's up to you if you want him to have that. Bob, you were going to say something?
No, I was just laughing a lot.
Okay. If you want to do video hookups, if you want to have a monitor and a cable box in a room, that's fine. It's up to you. HDMI, the big thing here, we work with HDMI, and the big thing is understanding all the HDMI versions. And what's emerging, and really cable operators is not really getting into that at this time, is the fact of the HDMI cable. There's different versions. Now, HDMI 2.0 came out, and there's actually 2.1, and there's actually a B coming out, is actually gets into subsampling and gets into how the actual chroma palette works over an HDMI cable. And you're like, well, why do I care about that? I'm just here to hook up the cable box. Well, what's happening is you're with an older HDMI cable, you're actually downsampling the signal, especially on a 4K TV. And you might say, well, we don't supply 4K. What do I care? Well, there are streaming services that do. And so just making sure you understand the HDMI cable that you're putting in, and you're putting in the best one in that you have available, right? Because we don't want us to be the bottleneck of why a brand new television is not getting the optimal signal. So we won't go into a deep dive there, but the main key point there will be the HDMI hookup and just understanding some of the settings. And because customers are buying these TVs, they have no idea what they do, as you're probably aware of. On the data side, we'll talk about data hookups. If you want to have a modem in the classroom, we did that last time. For the Wi-Fi, it's up to you. Voice being less and less, but if you want to have some voice equipment in the room and do a hookup, that's fine. So we'll review that, the EMTA, MTAs, the troubleshooting. Bob's going to spend some time there to correlate that to day 3 when we went over the test equipment and common measurements, and then tie that to troubleshooting. That's what the T-shoot is. And then he'll wrap up the program with premise signal configuration, understanding, you know, drop loss, understanding how to configure the signal. You know, in some operators, we only use balanced splitters. We don't use unbalanced. Some operators use terminators. So he'll talk about those types of activities in that module. And then go through some calculations. You know, how do I calculate loss? How do I, you know, what's the ideal power level that I should expect at the cable modem? You know, what's not a good power level, you know, on the return, those types of things. We'll leave some time for you to do the final exam in class. You can use your open notes if you want. So any notes that you have, you can't use each other. And you answer some questions there. And that's a 70% to pass, 70%. So it's 6 points less than a certification. And that will give you an understanding, and that will give us feedback to say, here's some areas that you can focus on. Where we are in the learning path as far as certification, I circled that. That's all the certifications that we have. But we're up in the upper left. You can go on our website and grab a whole bunch of details on that. The certification covers these areas. If you're wondering what's on the certification, well, it's also what's in the training is aligned to the certification. So we'll have technology systems and requirements, premise devices, installation, troubleshooting and maintenance, standards, and safety. As far as standards, very limited standards. We only cover the standards that many folks follow outside the United States. You may get a question on the FCC. We realize you do not have the FCC. You have a similar organization that sets power standards, or you may follow the FCC. But for the most part, very, very limited. You might get one question that might not specifically pertain to Bermuda. And Bob will point that out. Because Bob, what's the FCC in Canada? Is the CIRD?
There's Industry Canada, which sets the standards, and then there's the CRTC, which is the government.
Okay, I couldn't remember that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Bob's Canadian, so he's actually done a lot of work in the United States, so he's got both of those things he can bring to the table. And then, so any questions about the course? Anything that you, as you're going through, doing some stuff, any questions?
I have a question. So if by chance Kyle was unsuccessful with passing the certification, how long is it before he can take it again?
24 hours.
Timmy, we know that's not going to happen.
How long is Bob going to be here for, Doug? Because you guys normally leave the next day after the last, when we take the exam. So is he going to be here, or he does not need to be here?
So Bob does not need to be there. So for the certification, I heard two things. Yes, typically 24 hours. And that means, let me clarify that, is if Kyle went in and actually registered for another exam on our website. If you're going through One Communication, that won't be 24 hours. So give that, I would say give that 7 days, just to be safe. Bob is, as far as proctoring the certification exam, you will have that proctorship through One Communication, then you can schedule that yourself. So you'll go through a proctor later on after the class. Bob will be there so you can do the final exam. That's not proctored. So you could do the final exam there with Bob. You know, you could actually do the final exam before the end of the class. So does that answer your question?
Yes, but is it written in stone, meaning that, like I said, if I did the exam and I felt like I knew where I went wrong and it was still fresh in my memory, is it possible that I could resit the exam that same day?
The only way to do that is if you went on and used your credit card and bought an exam right off our website to do it that fast.
Yeah, I've got the company credit card.
Okay. You'll have to clear that in-house.
You need to take your approval.
Yeah. Yep. So, like I said, it's open books, and don't take that lightly. It's open book. It's a cakewalk. Just be careful. You know, there are questions when people see them and reread them, and I take certification exams all the time, and I took one last week for CEDIA, which is the Consumer Electronic Design Group that does home theaters and all that stuff. And yeah, there's some trick questions. They got me on a few, and after I realized it, I'm like, oh, I went back to my book, and I'm like, oh, that's what they were asking me. Oh, so be careful. So you don't have to take the test. You know, be careful, take your time, and then take the exam. We don't want you to have to take it a second time.
Mm-hmm.
Another option might be is just form a study group. A lot of the operators, the technicians get together and say, hey, look, we're going to meet for an hour on this day, and you could do it through a phone call or something like that. Or get together. We're going to get together for 30 minutes just to review some things. You know, pick Bob's brain while he's there. He's certified. Obviously, you can't teach the specifics of the test, but ask Bob, you know, what are his recommendations, his pointers, his tips while he's there. Any other questions? Okay. I covered these pieces. There's the app. Membership resources. This is after the fact. When Bob leaves, you went through the course, you took everything's good. You have a membership. There's all types of stuff we have 20,000 minutes of webinars. I just pulled a few. Maybe, I want to learn more about the signal level meter. This was done by Viavi this year. There's an hour webinar. So there's a lot of stuff you can continue learning. Even though you took the class and passed, you might want to do some of these. Back to the basics. There's a whole bunch of this stuff. More webinars here. And again, I'm more than happy to just email me, see if I can't find this stuff you showed us. Where do I get this? And I'll share this slide deck so you'll have it. Member Connect. We actually have a Member Connect you can go to and post questions. Hey, I'm prepping for the BPI certification, and you want to post a question. That goes to all 20,000 plus of our members, and any of them could comment on that. We have a magazine. I shared this before. This is the wireless issue. There's a new issue coming out. I forget. I didn't put the cover in here, but this magazine is available to you as a member. It's all electronic, really nice. You can get looks good on an iPad. The training progressions, I pointed those out. The areas in red, the similar stuff that you've probably been working on, and then you were enrolled in a boot camp. You're like, oh, what's this? Is it a whole new class? No, it's actually a same class in a different format. So that's everything I had on on the BPI. What other questions? Bob, Bob, how about, while they're thinking of some questions, how about you give yourself a little intro, because I feel like I didn't do that at the beginning of the call. You want to just introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. So my name's Bob Grant. I live in Southern Ontario between Niagara Falls and Toronto. Been here 50 years plus. I've worked for the MSOs in the area, from install, service, inspection, supervision, management. Currently, I'm working for a subcontractor for one of the MSOs doing project management. I meet with the OSPs, or the outside plant specialists, and they're extending plant or pole changes, power supply changes, new subdivisions, that type of neat stuff, and going out and meeting with them, determining what needs to be done, and bringing it back to my firm. And we put together projects and continue and go through it and finish it off. I've worked with Steve for about 3 to 4 years now. We did some work in California, and I've met up with Steve quite a bit at some of the functions. I strongly recommend that get whatever you can from the SCTE. It's a great organization. I'm on one of the chapters, on the Ontario chapter. I'm on the board for it. We do these webinars that Steve's been discussing. We share them. We work a lot with the Great Lakes chapter, which is out of the Michigan area. But whatever I can help you with, feel free to ask. I got roughly 25 to 30 years in the industry, and it's a great industry. I've enjoyed it. I never thought back in high school, and I finished back in 1984. I even had a viable, I never even heard of cable. I live in a small town, about 2,500 people, so I never even realized I could make a career out of this, and here I am almost 30 years later. And then the final thing, I suppose, back in high school, I always recall taking algebra. When am I ever going to use this in the real world? And every day out in cable, I use 4 times the frequency equals twice the loss. Steve was discussing signal loss across premises. If you're recording 2 different channels, one at 75 megahertz and one at 300 megahertz, you'll lose twice the signal at the 300 megahertz, and it gives you an indication of the integrity of the cable that you're working on. Something I use constantly. But yeah, there's a lot of great information that comes out of this.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions from Bob? Bob, I think they're ready. They just can't wait to get there.
Excellent. We'll
Did I get your email correct, Bob, on the screen? bgrant@scte.org?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So if you have questions, you want to talk to Bob directly, you can. But that's all we have for today. Josine, is there anything else we can do?
No, I think we're fine, and if the guys don't have any questions, then we're good to go.
Okay, and just so the group knows, Paul Rodriguez will be doing the next coaching session on the 23rd. And that's why his name is listed here. So I will not be available. I'm heading to Argentina on Sunday. I was kind of talking about that earlier. And so I'll be out of the country. Normal for me to be traveling like a crazy person. But Paul, you'll be in good hands with Paul, and I think some of you know Paul. But don't hesitate. If you have any questions, I'm always available in email.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Take care until we talk again.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Right.
Oh, that tree's getting down.